You're good at almost everything you do. You hit your deadlines. You solve problems other people can't. You've been told your whole life that you think too much, and somehow, impossibly, that's become both your greatest asset and the thing quietly destroying you from the inside. You lie awake at 2 a.m., replaying a meeting from 3 days ago. Not because it went badly, it went fine. But because you said something slightly wrong in the 5th minute, and part of your brain filed it under unresolved, and now that file is open at 2 a.m., running its terrible audit. This is not an anxiety disorder. This is not a weakness. This is what happens when a highly capable mind has been trained to find every error, anticipate every consequence, and never, ever switch off. And here's what no one tells you. The same mental machinery that makes you exceptional at work is the exact machinery that makes rest impossible, relationships exhausting, and your inner life feel like a courtroom where you are always on trial. The Stoics knew this person. They wrote about this person 2,000 years ago, not because they were predicting modern burnout culture, but because this particular trap of the high-achieving mind is not new. It is ancient, and they built a precise psychological framework for escaping it. Today we're going to walk through that framework together. Not surface-level quotes, not just be present. Real Stoic psychology, the mechanics of how it actually works, applied specifically to the mind that cannot stop working, cannot stop judging, and has quietly forgotten what it feels like to simply be okay. Let's start by naming what's actually happening. Modern psychology has a term for what high achievers often experience. Rumination, not thinking. Rumination. The difference matters. Thinking is purposeful. You apply mental effort to a problem. You reach a conclusion or a decision and you move on. The loop closes. Rumination is thinking with a broken loop. You apply mental effort to a problem, usually a social one, an identity one, a performance one, and you never reach a conclusion because the loop is not designed to close. It's designed to protect. It keeps rerunning the scenario in case you missed something, in case there's still a threat. In evolutionary terms, this made sense. If you'd narrowly escaped a predator, your brain would benefit from replaying that encounter over and over, learning every detail, every mistake, every near miss, so you'd survive the next one. But your brain cannot tell the difference between a predator and a difficult performance review, between mortal danger and the email you haven't answered yet. The physiological response is identical. The loop runs exactly the same. For high achievers, this system is dialed up unusually high, and for a reason that might surprise you. Overthinking is not a flaw that arrived from nowhere. It was almost certainly adaptive at some point in your life. Children who grew up in unpredictable environments, where a parent's mood could shift without warning, where approval was conditional, where you had to read the room constantly to stay safe. Those children develop hyperactive threat monitoring systems. They become excellent at anticipating what might go wrong. They become, in other words, excellent thinkers. And then those children grow up and enter high-performance environments, schools, companies, competitive fields, where their hypervigilance is rewarded. They call it conscientiousness. They call it attention to detail. They give it promotions and praise. What they don't tell you is that you're being rewarded for a trauma response, and that it has a ceiling, and that above that ceiling, it stops being an asset and starts being a prison. This is the starting point the Stoics worked from. Not you're broken, not you need to think less, but the tool you've been using has become your master when it was always meant to be your servant. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals, a book we now call the Meditations, never intended for publication. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Simple words, but notice what he's pointing at. He's not saying your mind is wrong. He's saying there is a part of you that stands above it, a part that can observe the loop without being trapped inside it, and that the distance between you and your own thinking, that gap, is where Stoic practice lives. The first and most foundational Stoic tool is something Epictetus called the dichotomy of control. And if you only take one thing from this video, make it this. Epictetus was born a slave. He had no freedom of movement, no legal rights, no ownership of his own body. And yet he became one of the most psychologically free beings in recorded history. His student Arrian wrote down his lectures, and those transcripts became the discourses, one of the most precise psychological manuals ever written. Epictetus opens with this: some things are in our control and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are body, reputation, command, and, in one word, whatever are not our own actions. This is not a passive philosophy. This is not accept everything and do nothing. That's a common misreading that misses the point entirely. The dichotomy is a sorting system, and for the overthinker, it is surgical. Here's how to apply it in real time. When your mind starts running a loop, and notice, not if, when, the first question you ask is, what in this scenario is actually within my control? Not what do I wish I could control, not what should be within my control, what actually is. Your output, within your control. Other people's reactions to your output, not within your control. Your effort, within your control. Whether your effort is recognized, not within your control. Your values and how you behave, within your control. Your reputation and what people think of you, not within your control. The high-achieving overthinker's loop almost always lives in the second column. We replay the meeting because we're trying to control how we were perceived. We rehearse conversations because we're trying to engineer someone else's response. We stay up calculating outcomes that depend entirely on variables we do not own. And here's what Epictetus understood that modern anxiety research has since confirmed. The suffering is not caused by the event. It's caused by the resistance to the fact that the event is outside your control. Your nervous system is expending enormous energy trying to grip something that was never grippable. The practice, and this is a practice, not a one-time insight, is to notice when you're in the second column and redirect. Not suppress, not dismiss, redirect. This outcome is not within my control. What is within my control right now? My next action, my preparation, my response, my values in this moment. Psychologists studying cognitive behavioral therapy independently arrived at almost the same structure 2,000 years later. They call it the cognitive model. Events don't cause emotions. Interpretations do. Change the interpretation. In Stoic terms, realign with what is and isn't yours to own, and the emotional response shifts. Epictetus put it more bluntly: men are disturbed not by things, but by the opinions about things. Not your boss's decision, your opinion about your boss's decision, not the outcome. Your insistence that the outcome must be different from what it is. The second framework is more subtle and in many ways more powerful for the overthinking mind specifically. Marcus Aurelius had a practice he returned to constantly throughout the meditations. He would step back from whatever he was experiencing and observe it as if from a distance. Not distance as in emotional detachment, distance as in perspective. He called it the view from above. Imagine looking at your situation from an aerial view, from far enough away that you can see the full context, the full scale, the full absurdity of treating a temporary setback as a permanent catastrophe. Modern psychology has given this process a name: cognitive diffusion. It's a core technique in acceptance and commitment therapy, developed by psychologist Stephen Hayes. The idea is to create distance between you and your thoughts, not by eliminating the thought, but by changing your relationship to it. For the overthinker, the default relationship to thoughts is fusion. You have a thought, and you become it. The thought, "I handled that badly," becomes, "I am someone who handles things badly." The thought, "This might go wrong," becomes, "This is going to go wrong, and there's nothing I can do." The thought, "They might be disappointed in me," becomes the emotional certainty that you have already failed. Diffusion doesn't mean the thought disappears. It means you stop treating the thought as reality and start treating it as mental weather. Something passing through, something your mind is producing, which is what minds do, but not something that tells you the truth about who you are or what the future holds. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. He writes in the Meditations, "The first rule is to keep an untroubled spirit. The second is to look things in the face and know them for what they are." Untroubled spirit, not an absence of difficult thoughts, an internal position, the observer position, that isn't destabilized by them. Here's the practice for daily life. When you notice the loop starting, and your ability to notice it is itself the skill you're building, try this. Name it as a thought. Not "I'm going to fail," but "I'm having the thought that I might fail." Not "they think I'm incompetent," but "my mind is generating the story that they think I'm incompetent." That grammatical shift sounds small. It is not small. It creates the gap. It moves you from inside the thought to the position of the observer watching the thought. And from that position, you have choices you didn't have a moment ago. Marcus Aurelius was dealing with things that would have justified catastrophizing. Military campaigns, palace betrayals, the deaths of children, the weight of governing the largest empire in the world. His journals show a man who had terrible thoughts, dark thoughts, exhausted thoughts. But they also show a man who had built an internal architecture that could hold those thoughts without being controlled by them. That architecture is not innate. He built it, entry by entry, practice by practice. The Meditations is not a finished philosophy. It's a training log. This one surprises people, because it sounds on the surface like exactly what overthinkers don't need. More imagining of bad outcomes. Really? But the Stoic practice of negative visualization, what they called premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils, is almost the opposite of anxious catastrophizing. The difference is in the intention and the emotional direction it moves you. Anxious catastrophizing says, something bad might happen, and if it does, I won't be able to handle it, and therefore I must prevent it at all costs, and therefore I cannot rest. Negative visualization says, I will deliberately picture the loss of this thing I value, this relationship, this job, this health, this reputation, not to frighten myself, but to reconnect with how much I already have, and to remind myself that I am capable of surviving what I most fear. Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we had come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day." The psychological mechanism here is something researchers call hedonic adaptation. It's one of the strangest and most well-documented phenomena in human psychology. We adapt to good things almost immediately. The raise you worked 3 years for produces a happiness effect that lasts on average about 3 months. The apartment you finally afforded becomes invisible within weeks. The relationship you couldn't imagine living without becomes the background noise of your daily commute. Negative visualization is the manual override for hedonic adaptation. You deliberately imagine the absence of what you have, not to suffer, but to briefly feel again what its presence actually means. To look at your ordinary Tuesday with the eyes of someone who almost didn't have it. For the high-achieving overthinker, there's a second and equally important application. You are carrying, almost certainly, a secret belief that you cannot handle failure. That if the worst happens, if the project fails, if the relationship ends, if you don't get the thing you've been working toward, it will be unsurvivable. This belief is never examined, because examining it would require imagining the thing you've been running from. The Stoic practice asks you to imagine it, fully, clearly, and then asks you, would you survive? Would you still be you? Would your core, your values, your character, your capacity to think and love and begin again, would that still be intact? Almost always, the answer is yes. The thing you're protecting against is survivable. And the moment you know that, not abstractly, but viscerally, after sitting with the image, the grip of the fear changes. You stop running from it. You can look at it. And something that you can look at directly has far less power over you than something you've been avoiding in your peripheral vision for years. Seneca again, it is not that I'm brave enough to face danger. It is that I have already faced it in my mind and found that I can bear it. The fourth framework brings everything together. There is a concept in Stoic philosophy, later expanded by Nietzsche, called Amor fati, love of fate. Not acceptance of fate, not tolerance of fate. Love. This sounds again counterintuitive. We're not supposed to love difficulty. We're supposed to solve it, escape it, optimize it away. But here's what the Stoics observed, and what high achievers consistently fail to see about the relationship between struggle and identity. The difficulty you have been fighting hardest to escape is often the exact terrain on which your most important growth is happening. Marcus Aurelius writes, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This is sometimes quoted as a motivational line. It is not a motivational line. It is a precise psychological observation about how resistant engagement with difficulty, as opposed to avoidant rumination about it, actually produces movement, growth, and resolution. The overthinker's relationship to difficulty is almost always avoidant, even when it looks like engagement. Running a scenario 200 times in your head is not engaging with it. It's a form of controlled distance. You're near it, you're thinking about it, but you haven't moved toward it. And because you haven't moved toward it, the loop never closes. Amor fati is the practice of meeting your actual life, not the life you're planning, not the life you're replaying, not the life you're worried about, but the life that is actually here, right now, in this moment, in this breath. The Stoics were deeply interested in the present moment, not as a relaxation technique, but as the only place where anything real is actually happening. Past and future are not locations you can act in. They are mental constructions. The only thing you can actually do is here. For the high-achieving overthinker, whose relationship to time is almost entirely future-oriented, always the next goal, the next risk, the next thing to prevent, the practice of fully inhabiting the present moment is genuinely radical. It is not passive. It is not a retreat from ambition. It is the recognition that the quality of your attention right now determines everything. That presence is not the enemy of performance. It is its foundation. Let's bring this out of the abstract and into something you can actually do. The Stoics were not philosophers in the modern sense, people who theorize in offices. They were practitioners. Epictetus ran a school. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire. Seneca advised emperors. These were people living high-stakes, high-pressure lives, using philosophy the way we use a daily health routine, consistently, concretely, because it works. Here is a morning practice drawn directly from their methods. When you wake up, before the phone, before the calendar, before the to-do list opens its mouth, take 5 minutes with these 3 questions. First, what is within my control today and what is not? Name them. Actually, name them. The meeting is within my control, my preparation, my listening, my honesty. The outcome of the meeting is not within my control. Write it down if you need to. The act of sorting is itself the practice. Second, what do I most value today? Not what I need to accomplish, but what kind of person do I want to be in how I show up? This is the Stoic North Star. Not outcomes, but character. Not what happens, but who you are in what happens. Third, what am I taking for granted right now that I would grieve if I lost it? Sit with this one. Feel the answer. Let it make the ordinary visible. And then in the evening, Marcus Aurelius was disciplined about this. A short review. Not a performance review, not an audit, a quiet accounting. Where did I act in line with my values today? Where did I drift? Not to punish yourself. The Stoics had no patience for self-flagellation, which they considered as useless as external blame, but to learn, to close the loop, to meet tomorrow as someone who looked honestly at today. Epictetus. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. There is a version of your life in which your mind works for you instead of against you. Not a quieter mind, not a simpler mind, not a mind that has given up on excellence or stopped caring about the things that matter to you. A mind that knows what it can own and what it cannot. A mind that can observe its own storms without drowning in them. A mind that has looked at the worst possibility and found that it can bear it. A mind that has remembered, even briefly, how much it already has. That is the Stoic promise. Not happiness as a destination, equanimity as a practice. The freedom that comes not from controlling everything around you, but from mastering, slowly, imperfectly, one day at a time, the one territory that was always yours. Your own mind. If this resonated with you, subscribe. Every video on this channel is built around the same intersection. Ancient Stoic wisdom, applied with precision to the psychological reality of living in a high-pressure modern world. No shortcuts, no surface-level quotes, just the real work. We'll see you in the next one.